Hello and welcome everybody. Today I'm talking to a guest speaker of mine called Dr. Dev Lal. Dev is an entrepreneur who runs a highly successful business in helping doctors to grow their private practices. Dev had a bit of an unusual background. He was first a scientist, then he became a doctor, and then he went on to working as a surgeon in the NHS. Along the way in his journey, he built a company that designed and built racing cars before leaving the NHS completely as a surgeon. Good morning to you, Dev. How are you doing?
Very well, Sam. Good morning to you. How are you?
I'm fine. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes, I think you've summarised it very well. I went to medical school, studied to be a doctor, and went on to become and train as a surgeon. But I've always really been interested in very many other things, and somehow, one way or another, I ended up founding a company with a business partner, designing and building racing cars, which was I think caught a lot of people by surprise in some ways, including myself. But we went on to have some success with that and sold cars all over Europe, and that was great. And then when the time came to move on from that, we moved on, and I found that really, obviously, medicine is something that's been my life, and I wanted to help my consultant colleagues to grow their own private practices. And it all started off quite innocuously in a way, really, as colleagues would sort of take me to one side and ask me, if there's anything I could do to help them market their practices, because they'd seen that, how I'd done really and the successes I'd achieved in building racing cars. And so I basically took the strategies that I'd learned to market the racing car company and sell the cars that we sold, and brought that to medicine. And so I just sort of did that for a bit of fun on the side for a while, but it sort of dawned on me really over time that this was something that was actually really useful and really did make a difference. So, one way or another, I decided to actually leave medicine. And so I left my job and set up full-time doing what I do now, which is to help my colleagues to grow their private practices.
That's very interesting, Dev. And how do you actually do them?
Well, I guess it boils down to the M word, which certainly a lot of my colleagues wouldn't like to hear, that, the M word, marketing. And in short, it boils down to this, and this is something that we learned the hard way with the racing cars, really, is that, no matter how good the product you make or service you provide, whatever it is, no matter how good it is, people can't buy it. People can't, buy your care. They can't buy your products if they don't know about it. And really, it stems all from that. And what marketing does, as I always say, is it makes the invisible visible, if you like. It makes your product or service visible for everyone to see, so people can decide if they want it or not.
Okay. And you said that you specialize in private practice?
That's right. As you probably know, the healthcare system in the UK is sort of two levels, if you like. One is the NHS, which is free to everyone, and then there's the private healthcare side of things. And no matter what your politics, unfortunately, a lot of what we used to do and used to be able to provide for free in the NHS is now no longer there. Such as varicose vein surgery and even the hernia surgery now. And so that's the sort of thing that's really very largely only available privately. So firstly, there's that aspect to it. And secondly, people choose to have care privately as well. So really, it's helping consultants who do look after patients on a private basis, one-to-one with their patients, to get known for that. Because in all the years up till very recently, really, the only way really to grow your private practice was through GPs, because GPs are the gateway to healthcare here in the UK. And if a GP knows about you and what you do and your expertise, and if a patient asks the GP to see somebody privately for their cataracts or whatever it might be, the GP will think, oh yes, that chap, Jim Jones does cataracts, I'll send the patient to him. And that's how it worked. So until relatively recently, the way doctors would grow their private practices was basically to get themselves as well known as possible, schmoozing, whatever you want to call it, but to get as well known as possible through educational meetings and so on with the local GPs, in the hope that when a patient came through the door asking to see somebody that they were, with their expertise, that the GP would remember them and send the patient their way. But as I always say, hope is no way to run anything or to do anything that matters. And your private practice matters. You invest a lot of time and effort and expertise in it, and it matters to you and it matters to patients. So if it is important, you've got to do it properly, and hope is no way of doing that.
So how does private practice actually compare to other traditional businesses?
Well, that's an extremely good question. Private practice is no more or no less a business than anything else. If you're a plumber, or you run news agents, or you sell yachts to Arab sheikhs, it's all the same. In the end, it's a business, and like a business, it needs two things to survive. It needs a steady flow of patients, customers, whatever you want to call it, people in there who are going to buy that service, and you need to make a profit. And the thing is, both these things for doctors in many ways are, I wouldn't say anathema necessarily, but they're difficult concepts in the sense that throughout all our training and all our time as A-levels and medical students and all that, we've been used to the concept of giving away healthcare, giving away our advice and expertise for free, which is fine. But here you are, you come through your training, you come out of it as a consultant, and you still do that in the NHS, and that's completely fine. But you start out in private practice and you find yourself in a situation where you've actually got to, first of all, look for patients rather than have them arrive through the machinery of the NHS. They don't just arrive privately. And secondly, you've got to, ask them for money. And I think that's something that doctors generally find very, very difficult. I mean, I know I did. I found all these concepts difficult when I started out in my, initially with racing cars, and then, in my own consultancy.
Yeah, talking about racing cars, it seems like you got a bit of an unusual background. I mean, you haven't come across any doctors who actually designed their own racing cars. How did that come about, and how did you end up arriving at where you are right now?
Well, that's a slightly embarrassing, well, I don't know if it's an embarrassing story or not, but basically, I've always been a bit of a petrol head. I used to always be tinkering with cars and bikes and this, that, and the other. And at one stage, I used to race motorcycles. But a friend and I had been to a stag do, and we'd gone to, so we'd been out the night before and had a few too many and all the rest of it. And then we'd gone to a car show the next day. And we found ourselves sort of talking about various cars that we saw and saying that, we could do so much better. And one of those sort of penny drop moments happened where I just sort of caught myself saying this, and I thought, we've been talking about this for so long. How many years have we been coming to car shows saying how much better we could do? We've either got to put up or shut up, haven't we? And my friend looked across at me, we were lying in the park sort of nursing a bit of sore heads, and he said, yeah, let's design our own racing car. And that's how it started, really.
Wow. Okay. So, how does what you did in the design of the sports car relate to the marketing that you're doing right now?
Good question. I mean, really, we've got through the process of designing and building this car. We had a prototype. We were productionizing, and then it sort of suddenly dawned upon us that this is all very well, and we'd invested very large amounts of money in this process, but we actually needed to sell some. And so began a crash course in real world, real life, marketing, learning how to do it. So I took a few courses, I read some books, and then I got, basically rolled up my sleeves and got down and dirty and did it. And by doing that gave me the real world experience. So, I learned the stuff from the books and stuff, and you've got to learn some stuff. You've got to learn the stuff from somewhere. But learning is not enough. Reading is not enough. You've got to apply it. So I applied it, and had some success with it, which was great. And then when it later came to marketing and helping consultants grow their own private practices, it's really the differences are qualitative only. Whereas you're not in a car where you're selling cars, you might be going to car shows and doing this and doing all sorts of different ways of promoting cars. You're again promoting a private practice in comparable ways, but the actual strategies you choose might be different. So you might choose AdWords or Facebook marketing or whatever. You choose there's a whole raft of different things you can do to grow any business. And the only differences really are that a sports car company would require X, Y, Z strategies that would work particularly well to grow it, whereas a private practice would require A, B, C strategies, maybe with a little bit of Z, which would also work across both sort of fields of endeavour. So they're really very similar in that respect. It's about getting your product or service known to the people who are potentially interested in what you do.
Okay, that sounds quite interesting. And moving on to this business about what you're doing right now and how you're helping consultants with their private practice. You mentioned something about AdWords. What is AdWords, and what sort of strategies would you use to help someone starting out in their private practice to grow it?
Right. Well, I mean, AdWords is basically people, as you know now, whereas 20 years ago, whatever, the way people would find out about a business would be to go to the Yellow Pages. And then they have all these local businesses listed, and that's how they would find out about you, a very main way. Now what people do is they go to Google, and not only do they go to Google to search for a business, so you might say, I want to find a judo school in Northwood or in Hampshire or wherever it might be, but they also go to find out information, and that's what it boils down to, because no matter what they're searching for, even if it's to buy a plasma television or something, they're looking for information about that, and people will actually go in preference to Google to their own doctor. So it's a little bit of standing joke amongst me and my clients about calling it Dr. Google, because people will look up their symptoms online if they've got a lump in the groin that might be a hernia or whatever, or they don't know what it is, but they'll look it up. What is a lump in the groin? So people use Google to search for information, and AdWords is a way of being found by people who are searching for what you do. So if I am a general surgeon, and one of the conditions that someone like me would treat would be to fix hernias, for example. So if I were seeing private patients, then I would say, right, okay, I want people to come to my website who have a lump in the groin, because that could very easily be a hernia, which is exactly the sort of thing I would treat. So I would set up a Google account, and I'm not going to go into all the details because it's obviously quite involved, as you know yourself. But I'd basically set up a Google account, an AdWords account, and I would set up a little advert which basically says, do you have a lump in the groin? Click here if you've got a lump in the groin, which would take somebody to my website, and I would tell Google that I would want that advert displayed to people who search for particular search terms such as hernia, such as lump in the groin, and so on. And you can focus in really, really quite sharply. So not only with specific words and phrases that people might look for, such as private doctor hernia or whatever, but also you can get those adverts seen in very tight areas and localities, so in particular postcodes or within a particular mile radius of your practice and so on. And the wonderful thing about it, of course, is that you're presenting your services to people who are looking for those services. So it's search-based advertising, we call it. So, and if you think about it, what could be more targeted than that? Here you are, you've got a pain in your foot or something, you put foot pain, Hampshire, and you see a list of doctors come up who are experts in treating foot pain. Well, the doctor's delighted because he's got a patient who is supremely targeted to what they do, and the patient is far more likely to click on any of those adverts to visit those websites, because that service that's being offered to them is precisely what they're looking for. In a nutshell, that's it.
You make it actually sound pretty simple. I mean, what's to stop a private practice consultant from just going onto the internet and going into this AdWords and just, doing it themselves?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. It's a matter of getting educated about, to learn what you need to know to set this all up and to set up your account and all the rest of it, and then putting in the time to do it. Now, in some ways, AdWords is a bad example in that it has some particular pitfalls. So whilst you can you can target people very narrowly and very well so that they see your adverts, but but there's a whole process that people have to go through, if you like, a patient this is, not an advertiser. And if each of those steps isn't set up very well and just right, then you could end up spending a lot of money to get people to visit your website and yet not get any patients out of it. In many ways, it's a very nuanced kind of thing. But the short answer to your question is there's nothing stopping people doing it. Just get out there, find the information. There are books out there. There are some people who provide training and tutorials and training courses like I do that you can learn about it and implement it for yourself. But it's a matter of making sure you have the knowledge and then putting in the time to make it work. And part of the trouble is that we're all of us time pressed, but doctors are known for their heroic workloads and time they spend at work, and so finding time for anything else can be difficult.
So how much budget or how much experience would a private practice consultant need in order to become a proficient at AdWords?
Well, that's how long is a piece of string kind of question, really. I think I simply can't answer that because it's a matter of, personally, it's a matter of saying, well, how interested are you to put in the effort to learn? But I would say it's not something for the faint-hearted. There are many other things you could do, but if you are willing to put in the time to learn how to do it, it can work very well for you.
Okay. And are there any other strategies that you would recommend for someone that is starting out in their private practice?
What, you mean like the top 3 things you could do?
Yeah, that'd be a good idea to start with, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the first thing, my approach with any consultant in the first step, anyone, with my clients, for example, is I go through their entire private practice, their process, if you like, the patients they see, whether they've got a website, what marketing approaches they've taken so far, what unexploited opportunities they think there are in their field and so on. I go through the whole process to see what they do. And then we look at picking it apart and seeing where the gaps are that we can make the improvements. And I think the very, very first step I always take is to look at their website. Because to me, the website is the hub, or should be, the real hub of all your marketing efforts. Because people, the use of search engines to find out information, such as Google, Yahoo, and Bing, and so on, is so ubiquitous that it's like not having a telephone in your practice, And now, if you don't have a web presence, you are putting yourself at a very serious disadvantage, in the same way as if you didn't have a telephone into your practice and expected people to write into you. Yes, you would probably get some referrals and some patients, but you'd be really making life difficult for yourself. And that's really very much my take on a website. So the first thing I would do is, whether you've got a website or not, I would say is you need to have some sort of analytics software on your website installed there so you can look at how well it is performing. And a great place to start is Google Analytics. Now, this is a free piece of software that's supplied by Google, which just sits quietly on your website, noting the activity that's going on, for want of a better word, better phrase. And it will tell you the numbers of people you get to your website, all sorts of other information such as their screen resolution, where they're from, how long they're spending on your website, how long they're spending on certain pages, all these sorts of things. And there's a whole stack of information that gives you, and that's really, really important, because if you do have a website already, it will give you the information, sort of a baseline, so you know how well it's performing, which is obviously a critical starting point. And if you don't have a website, it will give you that information in an ongoing way. So get your website up and get that on there. Now, the next thing I would say is that, again, sticking with the website, I guess there's 3 issues I talk about there. Firstly, get the analytics on there. Secondly, the proportion of people who will, say, pick up the phone to book an appointment, because that's what most consultants want when a potential patient visits their website. They say, look, pick up the phone and let's book an appointment and see you. So that's the most wanted response, if you like, from the point of view of the consultant. but the proportion of people who actually do that is woeful. It's far lower than many of us would ever think. And even in a very well optimized and performing website, it can be only a couple of percent, 1%, 2%, and frequently it's less than that. It's 0.5%, or even 0.1%. Now, there are lots of reasons for that, but the first thing so after getting analytics done is I would address all the potential reasons for that, and basically what that boils down to is the content, what you're saying on your website, the kind of information you're giving, and the way you're getting that information across. For example, people waste a lot of space on their website with these big flash sliders and banners and graphics and Facebook links and whatnot, and none of those things contribute to people becoming patients. So, and again, this is another massive subject, but just touching on it, I would say that there's a lot that can be done, even in a website that's performing well at the moment, to improve on that 0.5% or 1% of people. And the wonderful thing about that, of course, is that this is all free, if you like. So you've got, for example, we've got 1%. We've got 9%. We've got one of those 100 patients that turn up to your website who could pick up the phone and become a patient and contribute to your income and your private practice. One of them out of 100 picks up the phone. Well, that leaves 99 people who have been to your website who are potential patients of yours who are leaving. So anything you can do to increase that to maybe 2%, so 2 out of 100 or whatever, well, that doesn't sound very exciting. But first of all, from 1% to 2% is you're doubling the number of people. That's what you're doing. You're doubling the number of people who are coming to see you from your online presence. And that will double the amount of income you get through that process. And secondly, as I say, it's all free because they're there already. What you've got to do is to just make your content more persuasive. So the next thing I would do with the website is to fix that conversion rate issue. And then the third thing is something which really is it's a relatively new development over the last, 2-3 years maybe, and that's something called remarketing. Now, up till the invention of remarketing, people would arrive at your website, and as I said, typically 99% or 99 up, or worse or more of people leave and never to be seen again, because when they go, they're gone, and usually gone for good. It's called surfing for a reason. People flit about from website to website, and they stay where they get interested, and they go off when they're not. Now, up till recently, there was nothing you could do about those people that left. They were gone, and that was it. But now, with the invention of remarketing, what you can do is there's a little piece of software, again, that sits on your website that drops a cookie onto the visitor's computer. And that will show them, you can program that to show them adverts in the future about you. So imagine you're an orthopedic surgeon, so somebody that fixes joints and bone problems and is looking for patients to treat for hip replacements. Well, what you can do is your little advert could say something like, pain in hip, come and see Dr. Jones. And these adverts are now will follow you all around the internet. So, I mean, I'm sure you may have had this experience yourself. You've gone to Amazon to buy something, a pair of shoes or a TV or whatever it might be, or a disk drive. And then for whatever reason you've decided not to buy it, or you come back later after you've thought about it. And then, a little later you're on the Times website or your BBC website or somewhere else, or YouTube, and then this advert is sat there in the corner, which is from Amazon, talking about what you were just looking at, plasma TVs or whatever. And that's remarketing in action. Amazon are masters at this. And what it does, it gives you a massive web presence beyond your size. So, like I say, a small private practice in Lincoln could have their adverts being seen to people that end up on the BBC website or the Times website. And that has enormous impact as well as enormous reach. So the first thing I'd do is I'd sort out this website issue. The next thing, I guess, is really, is there time for more? Can I carry on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I found this very interesting. I didn't know about this remarketing, so go ahead.
Right, okay. The next thing is a little less concrete, but I suppose it's it's in many ways even more important. And that's sort of kind of a mindset thing at the risk of sounding a bit woo. So bear with me a second. I call it the need for reinvention. And what I mean by that is this. When, as doctors, as I said earlier, we're used to giving away all our advice, all our care to anyone who needs it for free at any time of day or night. And that's fine because that's what we do in the NHS. But that's not how things work privately. You're charging for your service. But to actually get your head around the idea of charging for your service and for marketing yourself and promoting yourself is something that is very difficult for doctors. And so people come through as consultants after many years of training. They might be 38, 40, 45, depending on your specialty and so on. And you come out having given away everything for free, and you come out with the intellectual expertise in your specialty, and you're a recognised expert at what you do, but you've got to sort of go back to school and learn, go right back to the beginning and learn how to market yourself. So you've got to understand the need to market yourself, and you've also got to be willing to learn and start again from scratch about how to do that. Because otherwise, whilst you can grow a private practice that's very successful, and many people do and have in the past, just through educational meetings and schmoozing, for want of a better word, GPs and so on, in the hope they'll send you patients, that takes a long time. And and not everyone likes it. I mean, I'm not a big networking kind of person. I mean, if you are a very warm and touchy-feely, cuddly person who enjoys networking, you do probably very well with that approach. But most of us, we're probably not like that. I mean, personally, me, I'd rather, chew my big toe off with my teeth rather than go on these schmoozing meetings with GPs. But, that's just me. And, besides, I prefer something more controllable and more scalable and something that's faster. Typically in the olden days, growing a private practice takes 5 to 10 years, but you can shortcut that dramatically. And the other aspect about that, of course, this whole reinvention and mindset thing, is the willingness to promote yourself and what you do. And so few consultants are willing to do that. And what I always say is this, I ask them, look, are you any good at what you do? Do you, by exercise your expertise and skills in looking after patients and treating patients, do you make a material difference, a beneficial material difference to other people's lives? Do you help them, in short? And if the answer is yes, which as a doctor surely it is, then surely you've got a duty to sell yourself, as persuasively, ethically, not talking about hard sell, we're talking about, ethically, but surely it's your duty to be persuasive and to encourage people to come and see you if you can help them, And I think it is. And I think that's a real sort of, change in mindset, if you like, a change in direction, which, which I think, all of us doctors need to have. And I think that's probably, to a certain extent is relevant to any business, really. I mean, even a plumber, if you can, if you're an ethical plumber and a good plumber and all the rest of it, rather than the horror stories of ripping people off. But if you are good at that, then surely you should be promoting yourself hard. And you shouldn't
So
be...
how would you recommend a consultant ethically sells and persuades their services to a patient?
Well, basically, it's the same really as in any business. It's about talking about the benefits. Because the fascinating thing is, in medicine, and we see it all the time in our NHS clinics, is that people have had nasty symptoms, and often even obvious cancers that you don't need to be a doctor to realise that this is something very seriously wrong here. People have had nasty symptoms, either severe pain or some obvious deformity, like a big lump in the breast or whatever. They've had these symptoms for a long time, and they put off and they keep putting off and they keep deferring seeing somebody about it. And and it's a crying shame because they in many cases people are turning up with cancers, for example, like breast cancers, which if they turned up all those months ago or even longer that they've had these symptoms, it could have been even cured. But because the things are so late, the treatment options are so limited. And even when we're not talking about cancers, where you could talk about a nasty hernia, which is, causing a very large and painful lump in somebody's groin. They're finding it difficult to work. They can't get trousers or underwear that fits, and they still keep putting it off. And this is, this is a crying shame, because they, again, as I say, they could have had this treated and fixed. And they could have had their mind put to rest and be back at work, all that time ago. So it's a matter of trying to persuade people to do what is in their best interests. And that's a matter of selling the benefits of what you do. So, you talk about, so in private care, there are many benefits to private care. You talk about seeing the consultant rather than a trainee doctor. You talk about having an appointment at a time and a date that suits you. We talk about being seen in pleasant hospital environments with nice clean carpets and in a nice environment, which is something that carpets and decent food and all the rest of the NHS can't provide, all that sort of thing. You talk about appointments and scans and tests that are done when you want them. If you need an MRI or whatever, you can get that same day, not wait 3 weeks or 3 months down the line. So there's all these benefits, and it's a matter of basically promoting the benefits of what you do. So that's not only the environment in terms of private care, but it's also seeing the consultant of your choice who has long-standing and well-recognised expertise in treating given conditions. So it's about promoting the benefits of being seen by you in a private setting. It's no more complicated than that, really.
Okay, that sounds quite interesting. Any other strategies you can share with us?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's difficult to know where to start, because I mean, as you know, I was recently in the press because I was commissioned to write a piece on 100 ways to grow your private practice. So I found myself physically having to make myself stop when I reached 100. And the point simply is that there are so many things you can do. One strategy that is sort of tickled my fancy, apart from Google AdWords, because the wonderful thing about AdWords, of course, is that you're presenting your services to people who are searching for those services, which is something that up till the internet age was not possible. You put an advert in the newspaper, or whatever. Well, 99.99% of people who read that paper or more, didn't need to have their hips replaced, but now, so it was wasted. But now your advert is being seen by people who, are just interested in hip replacements. So AdWords is a great thing. But another one is perhaps Facebook. And I'm not talking about all this likes and social media kind of, niceness that goes on Facebook or whatever. I'm talking about serving adverts, basically pay-per-click adverts on Facebook. So a great strategy would, for example, so say you're an orthopedic surgeon. We talked about orthopedic surgeons before. These are doctors who help people with problems with their bones and their joints and hip replacements and so on. So you're an orthopedic surgeon who would like to help people who've injured their knee. And one of the main injuries, one of the commoner injuries that happens to the knee is something called an anterior cruciate ligament tear. And this is a sort of injury that sports people would more commonly get than anybody else. So the wonderful thing about Facebook advertising is that you can present your adverts to groups of people with specified interests, basically according to demographics. So in this example, as an orthopedic surgeon, you would ask yourself, well, okay, which kinds of people do injure their knees? Well, they're people age group roughly between 18 to 35 or 40 maybe. There are people who, men and women, predominantly men, but men and women, who engage in sports such as football, rugby, skiing, and gymnastics. And these are precisely the people that you can target through Facebook. You can specify that you want your advert, so which might say, have you injured your knee, or do you have knee pain, or something like that. You can have your advert that's looking for people with knee pain or previous knee injuries, and that advert will only be shown to people who are within the age group you specify, within a location you specify, so London area or whatever it might be, who have an interest in the sports you specify. It is that powerful. And, you know, those people would now click on your advert, they would end up at your website where you were talking about how you can help people with knee pain. And whilst you can't make a diagnosis of an anterior cruciate ligament tear or whatever online, of course, but that's not the point. What you want is people with the symptoms that you would typically want to see. You want them to say, yeah, I'm going to book an appointment to see this guy because he seems to know what he's talking about knee injuries. And the diagnosis comes later. But you see how you can sort of set up a funnel, as we call it, to scoop up the people who are interested and could potentially benefit from what you do.
Okay, and sounds very interesting. Coming back to sort of like, you know, what sort of results about in a private practice, how would these strategies in particularly benefit a consultant running their private practice?
Right. Well, I mean, one of the thing with marketing, okay, as we said, there's so many ways of growing your private practice and so many ways of marketing your business, but not all those strategies will work for every single private practice, every single business, and it's a matter of trial and error. But the advantage of having the experience of what is, I've used in various sort of for different specialties, so is that I have a good idea of what's going to work, and it's a matter of trying it to see. But some of my clients have achieved enormous results. So, for example, there was one client that has literally got who is increased his private practice from $500,000 a year from when I was working with him to just shy of £1 million a year over 3 years. Just as a simple flavour of what is possible, one cardiologist had been in private practice for just a couple of years, and he'd set up a website and he'd asked me for a critique on ways he could improve his website to get more patients. And so I went through things with him and came up with a whole list of things that I thought that he could improve upon what was already there. I think changes he could make, some simple, some more complicated, that would really make a world of difference to the number of patients he would get from his website. And at that stage he was getting only a couple of patients a month. So months and months went by, and I didn't really hear anything from him. And then he got in touch with me again, and he rather sheepishly pointed out that he really ignored what I had to say for so many months, and then he revisited it and thought, well, nothing has really changed. Let's have a little look and see. So he made some of the changes, just a few of the simple changes that I had suggested to his website. And he left, and he didn't want to do the rest of it because he thought this was all pointless. And that made a vast difference to his website. And so instead of just getting 2 per month, after 3 months of them making the changes, he was getting 2 private patients a week. Now, that might not sound very exciting, but 2 a week is basically 8 a month, isn't it? Whereas he was getting 2 before. So if that's £2,000 a month, that's jumped to £8,000 a month, isn't it? So it might not sound very exciting, but these little things add up. And interestingly, he's decided to go away and implement the other bits and pieces of advice that I told him and see where that takes him. So I'm optimistic and hopeful he's going to contact me again to say that he's getting some even better results. But this is just some of what is possible. And another consultant, he grew his practice from, let's have a look, I think he was initially doing 42,000 per annum. He's an ophthalmologist, and just in cataracts alone, within a year, he'd increased his private income from 42 to somewhere between, it was just shy of it, it was between 156 and £250,000, and that was just on the cataract side. So the results you can get are phenomenal. Not everything works as well as that, but you won't know until you try, and simply just hoping. Hope is no way to run anything, of course.
Okay, so out of all these strategies that you've been talking about, like pay-per-click with AdWords, Facebook. You mentioned something about retargeting, something about improving website conversions. We touched about how to ethically sell and persuasively sell. Out of all these different strategies, what's the one that you would recommend that some consultant in their private practice can actually put into action like right away after this call?
Okay, good question. I would say the very first thing you should do, because unless you're if you're just starting out, brand new from scratch, I would say take the approach we'll describe with your website. Get a website built that conforms to best practices, which in terms of content and so on, and do that. Because you've got nowhere else to start from. But if you've been in practice for any length of time, even for 6 months or a year, you should have some patients in through the door. And you need to ask yourself is how are those patients finding you? Because even if you're not making any active effort to grow your practice through any marketing strategy, then there will be a way they are finding you, and that might be, the chances are that's through GPs, but it might be that they found you on your own website, or it might be that they've been referred through other patients that have seen you and so on. But there will be a way they are finding you. And the quickest and simplest and easiest way to grow your private practice in the absence of anything else is to do more of what already works. Because if you've been in practice for a little while, even if what you're doing isn't working very well, the pathway, of getting people to come and see you, it's still working. Because otherwise you wouldn't be seeing any patients at all. So if you can improve upon that, that's the quickest thing you can do. So that's what I would certainly advise.
Yeah, that sounds like some great advice, Dev. So how can someone find out more information about you?
First thing is basically, the simplest thing is simply go to my website, which is privatepracticeexpert.co.uk, and you can have a look around there. There's a little bit of information, but there's also a way you can leave your details there. Just leave your name and your specialty and your email address, and I'll send you a 31 series of private practice tips that you can read in your email inbox once a day, and you can use those as a crash course in growing your private practice, which gives you all the information you need to get started and a flavour of what is possible. And that's the thing. And if you want to email me directly, my email address is dev@privatepracticeexpert.co.uk.
That's fascinating, Dev. It's been very valuable having you on the call today, and I'm sure our community will benefit enormously from the strategy that you've managed to provide us with. So once again, thank you, Dr. or is it Mr. Lal?
Yes, it's one of those funny things about medicine. We start off as doctors, and then when you become a surgeon, you sort of lose the doctor and go back to being Mr. But yeah, so Dev is fine. Either will do, but Dev is fine.
All right, Dev. Well, thank you very much for being with us today, and I'm sure our readers out there will be able to get in touch with you if they're interested.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you then, Dev. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.